This is a short little video on the government use of quotas and taxes to deal with the problem of negative externalities. Right? Negative externalities, oftentimes think about pollution, right, are the result of a market transaction. Companies will produce things for sale in a market and in the result create pollution that can go out and have an adverse effect on the environment. And keep in mind, the environment is a common good. It doesn't belong to anyone. So the only grouping, organization in society that can stand up to protect the environment is the government. And the government can often turn to either using quotas or taxes as a way of dealing with the problem of pollution, right? To deal with this negative externality. And we're going to look at this situation in the case of these two companies, company number 1 and company number 2, and both of these companies produce chandeliers. And in the process of making chandeliers, they create pollution that they dump into Crystal Lake. And we need to figure out the best way to try and protect Crystal Lake, while also not adversely affecting these companies too much. So it's a fine balancing act of what we're trying to do here. So to kind of get us started, we're going to kind of figure out how much these companies are producing at the current market price of $5. We'll say that chandeliers are going for $5. Well, how much will company 1 produce? Well, 5 times 2 is 10, plus 10 is 20. Company number 2, 5 plus 1 is 6. This will lead to total production of 26 chandeliers. Great. Now, we're going to make the assumption that each chandelier that is made creates an equal amount of pollution as every other chandelier that's made. So the pollution created by company number 2 making this chandelier is the same as company number 1. So in thinking about things that way, the way that we can reduce pollution is simply to reduce the amount of chandeliers created. If we can cut down on the amount of chandeliers produced, we will reduce the amount of pollution going into Crystal Lake. Now, scientists say that ideally, we want to get the pollution down to the amount that would be created by making 20 chandeliers. So somehow we have to reduce the amount of chandeliers that we want to do by 6. So we want to get to an ideal of 20, right? Our goal is 20 chandeliers. So there's a number of policy ways that we could do this. The first would be through having a quota, right? We could have a policy that limits each company to producing only 10, right? That seems like a fair policy. It's equal, right? We'll split it down the middle. So, right, policy number 1 max production equals 10 chandeliers for each company. Well, this solution, simple, easy, but really unfair. I mean, company number 1 is not touched at all. They only make 6. Company number 2 loses half of their production, right? They're only making 10, right? They're cut in half. And company number 1 might complain that this is really unfair. They are being targeted by this, and company number 2 gets off scot-free. More importantly, right, we'd actually end up reducing the amount of pollution greater than 20, right? We would reduce the amount of pollution down to 16 chandeliers. Now, some people would say that's good. Less pollution, right? The less environmental damage that's going to be done to Crystal Lake, and that's fine. However, that's really inflicting an awful lot of damage on company number 1, and it will make company number 1 really resentful of this policy. And right, a policy that's not seen as fair might be in trouble. And to a certain extent, we might have gone too far and done more economic damage in the attempt to protect Crystal Lake than was necessary. So why don't we think of another policy to try to get to our goal? The second policy will be to enact a tax, right? We'll use a tax. We'll tax both companies for every chandelier that they sell, and that will reduce the amount of money they make, that will reduce their incentives to make chandeliers, and that will get them down to the goal. So policy number 2, right? A tax. The problem is, how much to tax? What is the appropriate tax that will get us to our goal of 20 chandeliers? Well, we can figure that out by looking at our two supply curves here as being one supply curve. In other words, both of these together will be a market supply curve for both companies, and we can add this up. This would be 11 plus 3p, and we are trying to get to a goal of having a goal of 20. So we want our quantity of supply by the entire market to equal 20. This is our new supply curve, right? Come from adding up these two supply curves. Let's plug and chug and see what we get. We bring the 11 over, so that gives us 3p equals 9. So this comes out to a price of 3. So at a price of 3, when these companies are only making $3 for each chandelier, they will only make 20 chandeliers. Great. So how much should the tax be? Well, if the companies need to take home 3, if our current market price in the market, right, is $5, and right, the goal, right, the price that will get us to the goal is $3, well then the tax should equal $2. So the idea is a $2 tax here will get us to our goal of 20. And we can demonstrate that, right? For company number 1, if they're being paid $3, they will make 6 plus 10 more, that's 16. Company number 1 will make 3 plus 1 more, that is 4. Now, note what the tax has done. By placing in this tax, each company has proportionately reduced the amount that they produce to get to the goal of 20, right? And we've done it without having to adversely affect one company or the other. Both companies are basically equivalently affected by this, and this will be seen as more fair, right? Neither company can say that the other one is being given an advantage, and it still yet achieves our goal, right? And so a tax, if it can be figured out, is often a better way to achieve our goal of limiting environmental pollution, dealing with the externality, better so than the messiness of a quota.